Hello there, and welcome back to the Smell of Logic channel. I am Ramona, and we're continuing with our Reddit stories. Scary, paranormal, supernatural, unusual encounters. But before we get into that, if you'd like, go check out the my Amazon authors page. It's in the link. The link is in the description of every single video. There's coloring books, novels, kids stories, all kinds of weird stuff over there. But go check it out if you're interested. If not, that's cool too. Maybe if you do like this video or any of my videos, maybe leave a like or a comment, subscribe to the channel, share a video with somebody you know and love or can't stand and hate. That's okay too. A view is a view, right? Anyway, so let's get into this. Part 4, if you were keeping count. Story 1. I was in a basement of a building with my coworker at the time. It was pretty chilly down there when my boss and his first in command went to talk to the property owner. This was a famous theater during World War I and World War II. We found some old cans, brushes, and stuff in the dirt, but nothing there. But anyway, one day I was laying brick in the wall, and it was just me and another coworker when we heard an audible female moan. I straight up asked him, "Did you hear that?" And he goes, "That female moan?" I'm like, "Yeah, man." And he was like, "Yeah, but I know I'm not just imagining things." Story 2. So, growing up, I had an aunt, my grandma's sister. She was married to a rigorous, very grumpy man. I used to go everywhere my grandma went, even to my aunt's house. My aunt had a grandchild my age, my mom's cousin's son, who would always come over when I visited, and we played in a tree house his grandpa, the grumpy man, had made for him. One visit, I hear music playing, and I go towards the sound, and it's my uncle. He stopped playing, and I couldn't help but say, "Wow, can I try?" He yells, "No," and I better not go near his piano, and he slams the key cover shut. This startled the hell out of me, and for being talked to like that, just brought back my 7-year-old feelings. From that point on, I hated that man. I gradually stopped tagging along with my grandma, whenever she went to visit, until I eventually stopped going altogether. Then the grumpy man passed away. I don't know what he died of, and I didn't care. I was 13 at the time, and we all went to that house after the funeral. All the kids were in the living room talking, and I kept looking at the piano. I wanted to play it so badly. He didn't want me to touch it when he was alive, but he's dead now, so surely one key wouldn't hurt. The key cover was open too. I walked over to the piano with one finger extended. Just as I was about to hit the key, the cover slammed shut, not falling over, but slamming closed, covering the keys. It slammed so hard that the adults came into the kitchen to see what happened, only to find me there with my fingers still sticking out. And all of my aunt did was say, "Ah, you know your Tio didn't want anyone playing his piano." Even from the grave, he's still very protective. Story 3. I was at my boyfriend's house and realized I'd left my bag in the car. As I was walking toward it, I saw someone had hit the back of it. The brake light was smashed and the side of the vehicle was dented. I was so mad. No note on the front. Then, as I got closer, all the damage just vanished. I ran my hand over it, and nothing. Perfect. I put it down to imagination and went back inside. 30 minutes later, the neighbor knocks on my door and says, "I'm sorry, I just hit your car reversing out of the driveway." I went outside, and the same damage I'd seen 30 minutes earlier was on the car. I asked when he did, and he said, "Just now, 1 minute ago." I could have shown you the dash cam footage. So I've seen the damage on my car 30 minutes before it happened. Story 4. I was talking to my ex the other day about one of my experiences. I guess I'll share it. When I was a teenager, after work one night, my coworkers rode home with me. We stopped and grabbed a case of beer, though. We picked up my girlfriend at the time from my house and rode to a graveyard that was close by. We posted up, drank beer, smoked cigarettes, and BS'd for a while about having a good time. After an hour or two, possibly 2 or 3 a.m., we began to hear a screeching, screaming, or squealing noise. I barely know how to put it to words. Now, the road where we were parked, on the outside edge of the cemetery, had a big empty field on the other side of it, save for a few crops of vegetables. Not a lot, though. And a tree line ran the whole length of the field on the far side. These woods go into the mountains. The Appalachian Mountains, actually. Nothing out of there but a few campgrounds here and there. Perhaps a privately owned cabin or two for miles and miles. Dozens, maybe 50, I don't know. This happened in Tennessee, not far from the Virginia line, one way, and the North Carolina the other. a couple of hours in either direction driving on the highway. I have never heard this sound before, despite growing up in these woods and mountains. I've hiked across that mountain, a 4-hour one-way trip to a waterfall and a tiny swimming hole. Locals call it Blue Hole, which is one of the 4 different blue holes I've heard of. A popular name, I suppose. I hiked back half the hike in the dark. I've never been scared of anything in those woods. Even with black bears, they can be scared off with a well-timed gunshot or by linking arms and whooping. But this noise was terrifying. My elders used to talk about banshees and say, "Screaming like a banshee." That old saying popped into my head as we sat silent, listening to this sound move through the darkness, and it was very dark. 3 a.m. with no car lights, and you can't even see your hands. It screeched the woods for like 5 or 10 minutes off and on, left and right, always a similar distance. We were scared to speak, I think because the 5 of us just didn't say a word. Then it sounded closer. It had moved past the tree line into the field. The sound went out and came back maybe 50 or 60 yards away. We started talking then. We started grabbing beer cans and trash and closing the truck bed while I said, "Guys, I don't know what it was, but only a moron would sit here while that came down on top of them." So we scrambled, climbing into the car and truck to leave, and sure enough, as we were pulling away, that sound screeched out. Not 10 or 15 yards out from the vehicles, so it was coming. Now, before you ask, we didn't turn the vehicles to point the lights we wanted to, but the way it was laid out, the grave stopped maybe 3 or 4 feet short of the edge of the blacktop, with some medium trees over there, persimmon trees, if that's what you want to know. The blacktop was 1 vehicle wide, then a fence line to keep the horses and cows in their areas and vermin out of the crop areas. So we couldn't turn the vehicles anything close to 90 degrees in the road, maybe 45, but that wasn't enough. Anyway, I looked up the mating noises for all the local animals. Bears, different wildcats, deers, wolves, nothing comes close to what we heard. Even if it was a darn moose or some crazy shit, I wasn't going to let some enraged, horny animal come mess me up, or a Bigfoot, Mothman, gay love baby, for that matter. Story 5. Went to Fort Selkirk with my girlfriend and my mother. It's a historic site in the Yukon. We had a great time until we arrived at the school and the missionary's home, which is right next door. Listen, I get it. He was a priest, of course he was a pedo. No, this felt vile, like something worse happened. I'm not superstitious, but my girlfriend is. As soon as we crossed the threshold, I felt wrong. Like I felt sick to my stomach, but I was totally fine. My girlfriend immediately went on alert, looking around. As we went upstairs, my girlfriend went halfway, stopped, and came back down, panicked. She told me she heard a young boy screaming upstairs, with a little girl saying, "Don't go up there." We didn't go upstairs after that. Well, it didn't get better. We found the basement. My girlfriend wanted to try to at least go down, but then I heard a girl's muffled crying down there. We promptly left. As soon as we crossed the threshold and left the property, we felt fine. Every other building in the old fort was in good condition. No issues after the missionary house. I never really believed in this kind of thing. Perhaps a psychological response based on preconceived notions of how priests were perceived as pedophiles. Possibly my girlfriend's strong imagination and minor PTSD flared up. It was a bizarre and, honestly, vile experience. Story 6. A friend and I messed with a Ouija board. Once. It didn't happen then. I asked her if I could borrow it. At the time, I had recently lost my mom when I was aged 14 and was desperate to contact her using the Ouija board. One afternoon, while no one was home, I sat on my bed, legs crossed, and put the Ouija board on my legs. I grabbed the planchette and tried my best to clear my mind. And when I spoke aloud, asking anyone to discuss the board, emphasizing my desire to connect with my mom. The first time nothing happened, so I tried again. The planchette never moved, but my bed began to shake violently with me still sitting upon it. Nothing else moved in my room except my bed. I threw the board across my bedroom. Just as I did, there was a knock on my front door. It was 1990. Mom died in 89. And I ran for the door, asking my friend, who was standing outside my apartment, if we had an earthquake. I lived in California at the time. If it were an earthquake, my friend would have felt it as he stood outside my front door, only a few feet from my bedroom in the apartment. or as he climbed the stairs to an apartment when the bed shook. He said no. To this day, I've never touched a Ouija board again. It was the scariest thing that ever happened to me. I have had other unexplainable paranormal things happen before, but that one was the most terrifying. Story 7. In middle school, I was walking around a set of 6 heavy doors that led to a courtyard surrounded by the tech shop and the boys' locker room. Suddenly, as I approached, all 6 doors flung open. There was nobody in the courtyard, and the doors weren't accessible to people with disabilities or attached to any motors. There were no cameras. There was an old school built in the 1950s, and this event occurred around 2004. Story 8. I was at university, napping in the same bed as my friends. Let's call them Elsa and Anna. I'd woken up a little before them, so I was chilling all cozy and dozy, and I heard this old woman's voice in my head, clear as day, like she was right next to me, saying, "Ask Elsa why I did it." Now, it wouldn't be the first time I've heard auditory whispering in my ear, so I kind of just shrugged it off like nothing and thought I must have been dreaming. However, about a week later, we were all in the university hall's corridor, drinking ready for a night out, getting ready for her night out. Elsa got into the story about how her nan had given up a baby, and no one knew until recently, when her long lost cousin turned up after tracking them down. She was saying that she'd had a good relationship and how cool it was to find a long lost relative. Her nan had taken the secret to the grave. Anyway, I just burst into uncontrollable crying at hearing the story, like full on sobbing. It wasn't my emotion. I didn't feel sad, but it was like something came over me and I was channeling someone else's tears. Everyone was asking me if I was okay, and I said I was fine. This was so weird. I'm not sad, but I can't stop crying. It then dawned on me what I'd heard was that old lady's voice saying, "Ask Elska why I did it." And it suddenly made sense that she was talking about giving up her baby. I actually don't remember the reasons behind her giving up the baby, but needless to say, I was freaking out to the max. I called my mom, still so confused, and at first she thought I was on drugs because I was so confused and weirded out. But then I explained. She said, "Oh, don't worry, kind of thing runs in the family." And that was the awakening I had in my mediumship gifts. However, I've blocked it out and put walls up because it's scary to hear from the deceased. Still can't explain it, and it's definitely the weirdest experience I've ever had. Story 9. I work in a lot of older buildings on a college campus. During one of my first weeks, I was inspecting all of my buildings, and one of them was an old auditorium that had been out of use for about a decade. My coworker and I were checking the buildings for water intrusion because a massive thunderstorm was moving through, dumping rain. We split up and he checks the rafters while I check the basement. The building only has emergency exit signs illuminated, so I'm walking around with my phone light in a dirty old basement when I notice a small stairwell leading below the basement. I'm looking for water, so I go down the stairs and open a door, and there's a pristine hardwood dance floor under the basement with 2 chandelier-style lights on relatively low and warm. So I put my phone away and start searching for puddles. There's no dust or debris, and the floor looks recently polished. I spent maybe 10 or so minutes looking around the edges of the room before I climbed up the small stairwell on the opposite side that spat me out in the basement to the bottom of the service stairs of the stage. My phone starts going wild with texts and missed calls from my coworker who'd been trying to find me in the next building. I gave him a call and explained that I was in the basement and had no service. He said he looked through the basement and called out but didn't see me. He left for the next building an hour ago. When I told him about the dance floor below the basement, he asked me if I was thinking of the right building and said there's nothing below the basement except the steam tunnels, which can't be assessed. He jokes that I shouldn't be goofing around, wasting time my first month, and he asked what I was really doing for that hour. I told him I couldn't have been gone for more than 10 or 15 minutes, and he said he tried to call me for an hour. Somehow, an hour and a quarter passed while I was on a dance floor that doesn't exist. We went back to the basement and the stairwell so I could show him the dance floor, but there was no stairwell going below the basement anywhere. Where the hell was I? Every time I go back to that building, I check the basement like a crazy person, but there is still no stairwell. Story 10. One time, late at night, I was coming home from the supermarket. I was at an intersection. I had the red light. When the light turned green, I couldn't get my foot off the brake. It was literally stuck to the brake. It's a good thing because a car ran the red light going east at a good clip and would have killed or severely injured me had I gone ahead. I think that was a divine intervention. I had a different incident, also in that car, but that's a story for another time. So there you go. Some more creepy, interesting, entertaining stories. I hope you have enjoyed them. As I said before, if you did, leave a like, maybe leave a comment, go check out another video, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye.